Hi guys, I can't believe it. Here it is, December the 2nd. And oftentimes there's snow on the ground here. But it's almost 60 degrees. And I have an indoors video, a knife video, some handmade knives that non-professional people have made for me over the years that I want to share. But I had to come out and play with my SOG Tomahawk. And one of the things I wanted to do before I forget it is, if any one of you guys orders one of these things, be careful when you take it out of the sheet for the first time, because the very first thing that I did was cut myself, and it was pure negligence on my part. And anyway, be careful, because these things come super sharp, but boy are they a lot of fun. And there'll be times when I think maybe they could be very useful too. At any rate, let's leave the 60-degree weather and go back in where it's about 70, 72 or so, and we'll get the knives out and see if we can do a knife video. So we'll see you indoors. All right, bring on the knives. And I'll tell you what, let's, we're getting a lot of reflection. Let's move these out and we'll discuss them one at a time. Find a place for it here. This skinning knife has a general backstory of, well, let me start this over. I walked into a local business one day, and there were a couple of guys in there. And one of them had a knife exactly like this one. And he had a rag, and he was polishing it like he was fairly proud of it. And being the knife connoisseur that I am, well, connoisseur may not be the right word, but being the knife guy that I am, I had to go ask about it, where he got it, what it cost, and all that. And he simply told me, as he pointed to his friend, Gary made it. I thought, gee, this is kind of neat. So I began a conversation with Gary and asked him if he could make one for me. He said he thought that he had enough material to make one more. I asked him how much, and I won't tell you what I paid for it, but I will say this: I don't think he charged enough, and I ordered it right away. It was about 10 days later that I got it, and he was not a professional knife maker. He was a drywall finisher, as I recall. But I think that if I could do that kind of work, I would be a professional knife maker. I don't know. He signed it, and although I haven't seen him since I bought it, he signed it, G. Jones, 2001. So if G. Jones, if you're out there and you happen to see the knife, know that it's being seen, hopefully, around the world. It's pretty self-describable. I just like to look at it. I like to get the Simichrome and polish and just spend time admiring someone's work. I really enjoy this knife. And no, I haven't used it. There have been times I could have, but I thought it looked better in the display case than out in the woods. I don't know, someday I may sharpen it up real good and take it out and put it to the test. But in the meantime, I just enjoy looking at it because I think it's really, really neat. So, yeah, I mean, you know, you look at it and you look at the fine detail, the fit and the finish for someone that is not a professional knife maker. I just think it's just awesome that a guy can do this. So, okay, we'll move on. Let's go to the big knife. This knife was made by a friend of mine who has passed. And it's almost too big to get in frame, but we'll talk about the parts that we can. The blade, I'm told, was made out of a saw blade. And he told me at the time that the steel was so hard that he broke several saw blades trying to cut it out. And that it took a long time to make it. And again, he's not a professional knife maker. In fact, he worked at a factory. And this knife was made during his on-duty time at the factory. I really like the style of the blade. I think it's, to me, it's reminiscent of the big Bowies. And the brass guard, the laminated handle. I can only imagine how long it would take me to do something like that. And I really and truly miss this fellow. After the story here is after my dad passed away, and he died at a young age. He was about 50. After he passed away, this fellow came along, and he was just a nice guy, and we enjoyed the same kind of things. We liked to go target shooting and collect knives and, you know, just guy stuff. But he was more like a father to me after my father had passed. And this knife, I don't know how usable it is, but it's just kind of neat. It's one of those things that I put in my display case, and I talk to people and explain to them where it came from and how it came about and all that. But I will say that it feels good in the hand. And if I were in a position to need a knife, I would not be at all afraid to take this out and do whatever chopping and cutting that I needed to do. And that's the story on that one. It's really a neat knife, I think. And lastly, same fellow made this knife for me. He brought it home one day. I didn't know he was making it, and handed it to me and said happy birthday. And I must repeat that he was not a professional knife maker. But I thought, considering that he did a pretty doggone good job. And this one was made out of, I don't know, some really hard stainless that they used to make turbine engines. And a white micarta handle. But it, you know, I'm not so sure that if I was going to have a knife made by a true knife maker, I think I like this style of knife. It just has a good feel to it. What I would really like to have for this knife is a nice leather sheath. So I may get with someone one of these days and see if I could get a nice leather sheath. I would be likely to carry this knife around the homestead. Although I do have one that I wasn't planning to bring in, but I think I will. No, I won't. It's not a handmade knife. But I would like to carry this knife around the homestead, and I think that the fellow that made it for me would really like that. So it's probably time to locate someone who can make a sheath for me for this knife. And I'm not a true knife guy, so I don't know all of the things that you can say about a knife. I will say that I know about fit and finish, and for a guy that made something in his spare time at work, I think it was really, really, really kind of cool. So that's about it for the handmade knives. I've got some others, and maybe in a later video we'll bring those out. I do have one that I carry around here that I do a little chopping and this, that, and the other with, and it's a BKT, but it was before K-Bar. And we'll get it out. And we'll take a look at it one of these days. But these three knives were, let me get them all in frame here if I can. These three knives were handmade for me specifically. And like I said, the two were gifts, and the third was just way too cheap. So that's the story, and I'm sticking to it. I really do enjoy these knives, and I hope that you have enjoyed me sharing them with you, and hopefully we'll see you on the next video. Take care.